Never start a company unless you are literally laying in bed in the middle of the night and you're wide awake thinking about it.
Excellent entrepreneurs either are great salesmen themselves or they find a great salesman to partner with.
You have to radically believe in yourself. You have to know inside of you, there is someone who will figure it out.
Welcome to the next episode of the Entrepreneurial Excellence Podcast. It is a great pleasure. I have my friend Jason Johnson here with me today. He was one of the first Bluetooth smart lock builders, reshaping how we experience our homes, and then spent his career really sitting at the intersection of hardware design and human experience. Jason's the co-founder and CEO of DOMA Homes, a company shaping the future of home technology, building intelligent infrastructure for homes that think, respond, and adapt to the people who live in them, which is awesome, by the way. I know there's more coming soon, so exciting for more of that to get out there. Before DOMA, he was also the co-founder of August Home, which I was lucky enough to be an investor in, which also became the #1 smart lock brand in the US and was acquired by Assa Abloy. He's also commissioner in California's Little Hoover Commission, where you're helping you hopefully bring some startup innovation in system thinking to how California runs, which we need a lot more of. And you were the managing partner of Founders Den as well, which for those in the know was like literally the co-working space if you wanted to work with and be inspired by other top startups and founders. Jason, welcome.
Thanks, Adam. Great to be with you today.
So I kick things off with everybody with the same question, which is, how do you define entrepreneurial excellence? Like, what does that mean to you? And you've been a 4-time founder. You've seen who knows how many companies come through Founders Den. You've invested in probably a huge number as well. So you probably have a pretty unique take on what does it mean to be an excellent entrepreneur?
Yeah, I do actually. I have a very specific take on it. It's I can sum it up really simple. To be an excellent entrepreneur, you have to be really good at sales. You have to love sales. It has to be in your blood, day and night. You're selling to investors, you're selling to customers, you're selling to vendors, to potential employees, to journalists. All you do is sell. Like that's all you do all day, every day, and you have to love it. And if you don't, you're going to suffer.
Okay, so that is a great definition. Why do so many founders get that wrong? Because I will say, I think many founders think, oh, I'm the smartest technical mind in the world, I'm going to win. Or they just think sales is like a used car salesman and they look down on it. They're like, oh, like sales is for like those other people, not for like me because I'm some smart, PhD from MIT or something, or I worked at Google. So like why people look down on it and why aren't many people good at it?
Yeah, I give 2 great examples. It's Apple and Microsoft, and Steve Wozniak was the brains. He was a technical genius. He was literally making computers with his bare hands. But it was the business. It was the business as the salesmanship of Steve Jobs. And like with Microsoft, it was similarly. Bill Gates was the brainiac. He was the engineer, and then Steve Ballmer was an absolute sales god. Like he was a sales god before Microsoft, right? And then Bill pulled him in, and Microsoft would never have been what it was without Steve Ballmer. I strongly believe that.
Those are great examples. And you think even with newer examples today, I mean, is Jeff Bezos though a great salesman? Elon Musk, I think people would probably say, is certainly a great marketer. I mean, maybe not sales in the traditional sense, a great marketer. Are there other recent examples where like, oh, these are ones that are clearly just these people are amazing?
Yeah. I mean, Elon's a great example, right? Because he is both, right? He's a true engineer. He really understands technology through and through, and he's also an amazing salesman. He really is. He's raised more capital than just about anybody, and built a lot of businesses. So he's been selling to a lot of people for quite a number of years now. I think he's our greatest entrepreneur alive today.
For sure. No, I would agree. I mean, I know people have strong political opinions about him. He brought himself into that. But as an entrepreneur, I totally agree. There's no doubt he's inspiring on that side of things. But I mean, I'll push back on this a little bit still, even here, right? Like people might say, well, what about Mark Zuckerberg? Is Mark Zuckerberg a good salesperson? He seems like a really awkward person. And yet, of course, he's built one of the most successful companies out there. And even the Google guys, were they great salespeople, or did they just hit on the perfect technology at the right time?
Yeah, I like that you mentioned Zuck because you and I are both friends with Jonathan Abrams, right? And Jonathan created the first social network before Facebook.
Yeah, he was Friendster, right?
Friendster, and he did that with Sean Parker, right? And Sean Parker is a spectacular salesman, and what lot of people don't know is that Sean took the very investors of Friendster, right? Mark Pincus and Reed and others, and he brought them to Zuck. Like he sold them on switching their focus from Friendster over to this to be Facebook. And if Sean Parker hadn't done that, would Zuck have been able to raise the money and do all that he did? It's questionable.
This is sort of an interesting maybe side story, but like, why did Sean do that, sort of screwing over Jonathan to make Zuck bigger? But I mean, we both know Jonathan, so I don't want to throw him under the bus in this way, but like, where did Jonathan maybe not inspire the confidence that Sean had, when Sean said, I'm going to kind of, maybe not stab you in the back, but kind of go behind your back and have everyone focus on this random young kid from Harvard building the Facebook?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I've talked to Mark Pincus about this. I've talked to John Doerr about this from Kleiner Perkins. I've never talked to Sean about it. I would love to hear Sean's perspective, and I don't know, but yeah. I mean, it's Sean's, and Jonathan's a great salesman too. Don't get me wrong, but he's also a brilliant engineer, and I think at the time he was relying on someone like Sean to help him with the fundraising and getting the business off the ground.
So is the thesis then excellent entrepreneurs either are great salesmen themselves, or they find a great salesman to partner with? Because that's sort of more what you're saying, it sounds like. And they know enough to get out of the way of that great salesperson and let them sell.
Yeah. So like my new company, DOMA, I'm very lucky that my CTO is also a multi-time founder. He's brilliant, and he could go start a company tomorrow, and VCs would line up to give him capital because he's so brilliant. He's so talented. Honestly, I think part of why he chose to partner with me on DOMA was obviously the vision, what we're doing, he's on board with, but also I think he likes the fact that I enjoy selling. I enjoy the process of raising capital and all of that. And he doesn't like that so much, right? He just wants to build and create. And so his name is Aaron Gottwald. I should mention his name. And I think it's a great pairing when you bring those two forces together.
In what then leads to a great partnership? So maybe talking about like partnering your co-founders. I'm sure you've seen a huge number of co-founders where it breaks up and it doesn't work. So is sort of your thesis like you need a good one co-founder has to be great, or one maybe not co-founder directly, but almost like a co-founder, has to be just a rock star salesperson, right? John Parker was not a co-founder of Facebook, was obviously really early. Steve Ballmer, same thing, right? He wasn't actually a co-founder, but clearly was like early, huge to the success. How do you find that right partnership that makes it work really well to achieve that success? And should everyone have that? Do you need that partnership to have a great partner? And how do you identify when you have a great partnership and when it's a complementary one? And then, secondarily, we should talk about how do you avoid those pitfalls? Because once again, I'm sure you've seen lots of companies fail because the co-founders essentially break up.
Yeah. I mean, I'm lucky because in all of my companies, I've had really great co-founders. I've really
don't. I mean, it's not luck. You create your own luck. So how did you identify those great co-founders?
I've looked for complementary skill sets, right? Where maybe I didn't, like my very first one, it's funny because the very first one, I was more the technical person and my co-founder was more the salesperson. That was InterQuest Communications. And I was still very young and I still had a lot to learn. And it was great because I got to focus on technology and I got to watch him in the sales process and I learned from him. Just like I think Bill Gates learned from Steve Ballmer. I mean, I think Bill Gates, of course, is an amazing salesman, and he was, as he ran Microsoft for so many years. So I think it's complementary skills, and then I think it's understanding like what your role is and what lane you're in. And I think some of the biggest challenges in co-founder misalignment is when they just don't clearly define what each other's responsibilities are and respect the role and responsibility of the other co-founder and trust them. Right, you have to trust. I had an early mentor once tell me how important it was for a CEO to trust the people around him and let them do their jobs. Like, especially as CEO, if you're hiring VPs, you should be hiring people that you fully trust them to do their job. And you should not be inserting yourself and trying to coach your VP of sales on how to sell, right? On who to hire. Like that's bad if you have to do that as CEO. Because what that means is you didn't hire the right person, right? And what you should be doing is not coaching him or helping him. You should replace them with somebody that can do that job. So there's exceptions to this, of course, but more or less the point being is that you want to surround yourself with people that are complementary and have the strengths and have the capabilities you don't have.
And how do you get good though? So I find a lot of founders, especially first time or even second time founders when they're early in their careers, don't have the humility maybe to have that level of respect or understand, right? It's very easy for all founders, even no matter what you're at, to say, this is easy to do. This is quick. and not actually understand the nuances of it. So how do you build that level of humility where you say, I'm going to trust this person and let them really do their job, but also know when to cut them off, right? Know when they're maybe BSing you and not getting it done.
Yeah, I mean, it takes time. It takes years to develop that maturity. I'll be honest with you. In my early startups, I was uncomfortable hiring people that I thought were more senior than me, more mature than me, had better charisma than me. I felt threatened in some of those situations, and that caused some challenges. And then later, like with August Home, I had like 7 vice presidents, all of which could be CEO. And all of which probably wanted to be CEO, by the way. and I love that. I actually love the idea that there's all these people that wanted my job, and we're working hard to prove that they could.
You sort of had like a team of rivals, like Lincoln had.
Yeah, exactly. And they performed like that. They owned their roles, and they performed at that level. And I gave them full autonomy and trusted them in their roles.
So so many questions at this. So like, one, how do you hire then for those people who want to be CEO, but also how do you hire for people like that? How do you find those people, hire for them, bring them on board, convince them that they should come to your company and not be CEO, because like you can't have them talking behind your back to the board all the time?
Yeah. So I'll answer that question by kind of raising another separate issue, but it's something that I don't want to miss, because I personally find it very hard to hire people that are former CEOs. And that's because, once you've had that role, you think you have a certain level of experience and expertise there that you want to apply. And it's difficult. Like if I was to go become a, junior to CEO at a company tomorrow, I would have a very hard time holding my opinions on things that he or she are doing. And they may not want that opinion, right? But I know that I wouldn't be able to hold myself back. And so there could be some tension there. There could be, some challenges there. So I think the trick there is, as a CEO, you have to understand what your role is and own your role until you don't any longer. That means you really shouldn't be worried about anybody coming after your job, because it's your job. Right? You're only going to lose it if you're failing, if you and your role are failing. And in that case, maybe you should go. Right? So it's like, own it until you don't, and don't waste a lot of energy thinking about, people coming after you, and instead just focus on hiring the best people you can for that particular role. Right? Like I don't want to say I'll never hire a former CEO. I mean, if let's say I'm hiring a VP of sales, if I find someone who I think is the absolute best VP of sales for DOMA, that absolutely should be in that role, and she was a former CEO, yeah, I'm going to hire her, right? I mean, that's like, you want to hire the best person you can possibly get and afford for that role.
How do you know as CEO if you are not performing? And then related, how do you know the people that are working for you are not performing? Like there's never a perfectly clear line. Sometimes with sales, maybe it's easier. That's like, you claimed you're going to hit this target, you haven't hit this target. But as CEO, how do you know if you're no longer right for that position?
Yeah, so I strongly believe that every CEO needs to have their own advisors, like their own core advisors. So separate from the board, you might even have a board of advisors for your company, but even those people might be kind of strategically chosen separately. You need to have your own little mini private group. So as I sit here talking to you, I'm actually sitting in the condominium of one of my my forum mates in YPO. YPO is a global CEO club, and later today we're meeting in this condo. It's a group of 8 of us, and we meet together. And they are my most intimate advisors, right? They know everything about my life, not just my business, but also my personal life. And they're the kinds of people that I can tell them if I'm struggling with something, if I'm having difficulty with something, and they'll tell me. Like they'll tell me with no agenda, hey, look, yeah, you're kind of, you're kind of struggling there, and you've been struggling at this for this amount of time, and maybe it's time, it's time for you to rethink your approach to that.
Yeah, no, I have a similar group. It's super critical to have that in Worthwhile. And you just have to say, because people can see the background that you're in San Francisco, but it looks like you could be in Paris or something. And talk through, like, going back to the sales piece, right? Since you said that's the most critical thing for excellence. How outside of having people you can learn from, how do you get good at sales? What are the skill sets you can learn? How do you train yourself to be good at it? And what does it really mean to be good at it? Is it just your ability to convince someone to buy something that hasn't really existed before? What does it mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that some of the best salespeople we have are people that started very young, right? They were selling door to door, literally knocking on people's doors of their homes. There's nothing more difficult than that. It's difficult. I'm lucky that I got to do that. I also, my very first job out of college, I was doing inside sales, and I had to make 100 phone calls a day, like 100. And I think I took in 50 phone calls. That's 150 conversations a day on the phone. And I was measured on numbers. I was measured on success, or whether I converted to sales on those calls. And when you have that level of volume repetition day after day, you learn how to gamify it. And I believe that all sales is really, you have to gamify it. So one of my favorite things I refer to on this is raising capital. So in all of my companies, I've had to raise all the money myself. And what that meant is I had to do a lot of meetings, like a lot of volume. Some companies more than others, maybe 100 or 200 pitches. And you have to treat it like a game. You'd schedule like maybe several in a day. You go to Sand Hill Road, and I remember like doing this as like a game. And you walk in and you have that energy and you bring it, and you rinse and repeat. You do it over and you treat it like just like you're loading up a video game, right? And you have 3 lives and you power through, and then you know what? Then you got to start all over again.
Restart. And then do you think, though, the people who are not good at this is because they don't view it like a game? Like what is missing for most founders when they aren't good at it? And I'll give you an example. I actually spoke with the founder yesterday who was fundraising for his thing. And like, it didn't really feel like he sort of brought it. And even more than that, though, like, he didn't have all the answers. Like I didn't care that much about the product. Product was cool, all those other things. But what he failed to do, and he failed to convince me on, is that he's like, hey, like, I was like, happy to help you on fundraising, make some intros. I was like, who are your top people you want to really talk to? And he's like, oh, I don't really have a list. I was like, well, if you don't have a list, like, who do you really, are you actually treating this as like, into your mind, like a game? Like, I want to win the game. Every game I play, I want to go win that game. So therefore, like, I have a plan for it. Do a lot of founders have that plan? Like, do they think through it, or do they just think sales? I will say, by the way, sorry, this is a little off topic, but like, I found a lot of engineering founders, especially, end up thinking sales is easy. Like, oh yeah, like sales is easy. Like, I have to go code, and that's really hard, but I can go figure out sales if I want to. And they don't do it. So how do I get good? Let's pretend I'm an engineering founder, haven't thought through it. What does it mean to be great?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think there's this myth of, if you build something really great, people will just love it and they'll just be drawn to it, right? If you build it, they will come, and that is so rare. It is so spectacularly rare that you actually can invent something that is so revolutionary that it just sells itself. What you don't hear is like what you don't hear is like how many hundreds and hundreds of pitches Elon did to get funding for Tesla, right? Like you don't hear about like him doing a deal with Daimler Benz, right? To provide a Tesla drivetrain for all of the Mercedes-Benz vehicles, right? But like he didn't want to do that, right? He wanted to just make his own cars, but he had to find a revenue path and a fundraising path through Daimler Benz, right? There's all these dirty, nasty sales things that people had to do before they got to where they are, where the company, where the product is. And that's missed. I mean, people don't hear all those stories. So there is a lot of sales in everything we build, and getting caught up in the thought that if you make a great product, it'll sell itself is just really some people need to lose the idea of.
Correct. I mean, distribution's in a sense everything. Do you find that you have to be? I assume you would agree you have to be great at sales for sort of every part of your business. So one is obviously selling your product. Another one is selling investors. Another one is selling your team to recruit people. And then another one's to sell your team and maybe yourself even on sticking with it, right? It is hard being a founder. So like you have to convince yourself that you are working on something day to day that is really worth your time and sell yourself on the vision. How do you make sure you're good at all those? Like, do you change your story for the different audience you're talking to when you're selling them? Is it critical to be good at sales for all those different groups?
Obviously, every entrepreneur needs to read a book on sales. Like you need to understand the basic core principles of the sales process, right? And I'll just cover a few. But some of the key elements is identifying who your market is, right? Identifying it, creating the sales funnel. What that means is you're looking at the range of possible customer partners, whatever define it, and you're assembling them into a structure so that you can systematically pursue them. But even before doing that, you need to spend time really understanding who the customer is and what they want, what they need. Are you solving a problem for them? Are you a painkiller? Are you a vitamin? Are you an antibiotic? If you don't understand what that is, go look it up. You need to understand that. So this is funny. This is another fun little pet peeve of mine. We've all gone to trade shows, We've all gone walking around between the booths, and it's always kills me when I walk into a trade show booth and somebody starts pitching me on something in the booth. They just start like showing me the gadget or the service, right? And they start talking to me about all the features, and they never stopped and asked me who I am. Like, who are you? Why are you here? What are you looking for? Like, you want to qualify before you spend all that energy. Like, you might find out that, no, I'm actually just here because I'm with the company who sells booth spaces. I don't want to sell you a booth for the next trade show, right? Like, you're pitching me on this product that, I have no interest in, and just wasted 15 minutes of your time and energy. It's qualifying your customer and then speaking to their needs, their wants and needs.
And so, I mean, would you argue then that one of the key things for sales is the ability to ask questions in the first place and get people talking? Is that like, I tend to believe this, right? So I think the best sales actually is if I can do less and less of the talking, which by the way is easier with AI now, right? Everyone has an AI recorder. It tells me, am I doing too much talking or am I on some long just like rant? Is that one of the key things you think are important to do? Like qualify the people, get them talking about their problems, and then you can find a way to solve it.
Absolutely. Like for example, I'm gonna go fundraise for our Series A soon, right after when we announce the product here in a few weeks. And as I look at which VCs I may approach to pitch, like I'm gonna find out, like, is DOMA even in their realm of their investing thesis, right? I mean, if they're entirely doing enterprise SaaS software investing, well, that's not DOMA, right? If you want to know that, like, there's something that you have to offer them that they need, that they're looking for.
And is that even the case? I mean, some people would say, well, Jason, you've had so much success, all the top investors, and yet even for you, you still feel like, hey, like I still need to make sure my pitch is on point. I know who I'm talking to, why they would care about DOMA if they're a fit for us. That's still something you feel like you need to do, even at your sort of experience in sort of your well-known quantity?
I do. I've never been an investor, but I know that there's a list of things that they're looking for, and they need that mentally, to go through that list and to understand, where my company fits in that or doesn't fit, right? They have that list, and I have to make sure I hit all those items, or else they're going to be drawn to the conclusion this is not a fit for us, right? I make sure my soon deck I'll put together soon will have to cover all those elements.
How much are you practicing your pitch and so that before you go into your fundraise?
I have a great quote on this. I don't live by it, but I did a lot of press with my last company, and whether you're pitching from a stage or you're pitching one-on-one in a boardroom to a VC, every minute of your time is extremely valuable, and every word that comes out of your mouth and is extremely valuable. It has to be very precise and as efficient as possible. And my friend Marissa Meyer, she told me years ago that when you saw her get on stage at Google or at Yahoo, for every 1 minute she was on stage presenting, she did 1 hour of practice. Think about that, right? So like, it's the 15-minute presentation, she did 15 hours of practice, right? Because you want to get those words out correctly. You want to answer those questions as efficiently as possible, and that only comes through practice. And by the way, practicing questions from an investor, I will do that with ChatGPT. I would totally ask Chat to hit me with a bunch of questions as if I was pitching some investors and make me practice my responses.
That's great. I'm shocked by, I think a lot of people don't do that. And also, once again, they don't practice their sales stuff the same way. And so you end up wondering why your product isn't selling. And it's like, you're not putting in the time and effort to get there. Kind of still staying on this topic a little bit. What do you think of all the people you've seen come through Founders Den or founders you've worked with? Was it this ability to sell that set them apart in a really big way? Or were there other qualities that you're like, oh, when they showed up at Founders Den, they were like obviously going to be a massive success?
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit different than what I said earlier about how important sales was. I do believe product is most important. I believe product. It's product, distribution, and team. That's the three legs of the stool that I think an entrepreneur has to have for a successful startup. And so yeah, I think the best companies at Founders Den, and I think all of the unicorns that were built there, were really, it was really great product. I mean, it was really something that was well thought through and well developed, and first and foremost, right? And then it was the people that actually were able to bring it to market and deliver it.
And why do you think though, like, what percentage of the companies that came through Founders Den, and maybe give everyone like a quick overview of Founders Den, how it started and stuff like that too. But why do you think, like, you probably, I don't know how many companies went through Founders Den, but still only a small percentage of them were quote unquote successful. Why? What did all those other companies miss? Because they came in presumably with a good product, a great team, and yet they still didn't succeed. Why?
Yeah. So Founders Den was one of the first like private co-working spaces. It was you had to be invited to be there because it was curated. It was started by a few multi-time entrepreneurs like myself. We mentioned Jonathan Abrams earlier, Zach Bogue, Michael Levitt, and we wanted to create a space that was curated. Right. It was a place that if you met people at the water cooler or at an event, they were of a pedigree that you could have conversations that would be highly profitable for both of you. And about 300 companies went through there over maybe like 10, 12 years. I think it's safe to say that the ones that were most successful are the ones that really had the three legs of the stool established, right? They figured out product, they figured out the right team, and they figured out distribution. And those that didn't succeed were the ones that, one of those areas just really, they didn't pull it together. And as you already said, probably most of them it was distribution, right? They just never found how to drive the revenue.
Do you think there are certain things that once again they could have done, like looking back, could have done differently to find that? Like once again, there are certain founders, right? You're a good example of this, who seem to find a way to get all three of those legs correct pretty much every single time. Obviously DOMA TBD, but I assume it's going to be great. Why do other founders who are just as smart, just as ambitious as you, not get all three of those legs right and either wash out, burn out, don't come back to it, right? You and I have been in this game a long time, but a lot of people we probably both know are no longer in the Silicon Valley, no longer doing anything tech related. Where do they go wrong? There's just as we are.
I'll use one of mine. I don't want to make fun of somebody else's company or poke holes in somebody else. So my company, Rethink Books, was the first company I started when we started Founders Den, and it was an ebook software company. And I had a great team, great technical team, great marketing team. Funded is an ebook software company. It was funded by John Ingram, which Ingram is the biggest book publishing distributor in the U.S. But he was the first money behind Bezos on Amazon. Then they had a falling out, and then he funded my business, right? And so you're like, gee, that's pretty good setup. Like, why didn't you guys succeed with Rethink? And it was because of distribution. It was because we didn't figure out how to get our software out there as an alternative to Barnes and Noble's Nook app, the Amazon Kindle app, with a bookstore and all the stuff that with it. We never figured out how to get millions of people to download that app and buy books.
Yeah,
we never found that formula for how to do that.
Yeah, even if the software's great, the distribution still was just really hard, and maybe the market just wasn't big enough, right? Maybe there's a big market for it, but I don't really know of anyone who's made multi-billion-dollar businesses out of ebooks, unfortunately, right? Maybe Amazon, but even then, they had the distribution first, sort of. It's okay. So I want to go back, go through your history a little bit, right? You've had a fascinating history, like who you are as an entrepreneur. I think you talked a little bit about you kind of were like a hippie growing up in the Pacific Northwest somewhere. How did all that lead to you end up becoming someone who's founded 4 companies, knows everyone in the Valley? Like, where did all that come from? Like, how did that start?
Yeah, so that actually really refers to, I think, my greatest strength. And it's a gift that I got from childhood. And that was the gift of poverty. Like I grew up poor. I grew up with very little. What that made me was very hungry. Like I have a very distinct memory of my single mother and I living together when I was a little boy, and the rent check bounced, and the landlord came to tell us that we were going to have to move out, and my mom, not knowing where we would go, and seeing my mom cry, right, and like this sticks with you when you're like 6, 7 years.
Scary as a 6-year-old, right? And be like, wow, like, I don't really understand this, but my mom's really sad. And we have to leave.
Yeah, it's that's something probably a little boy should be exposed to. But I will tell you, I'm very grateful that I had the fear of poverty put into me very young, and so I was resolved. In high school to get great grades and be a part of all kinds of extracurricular activities.
Did your mom push that? Did she say like that's your education is how you're going to get out of this? Like, did she say that, or you just sort of knew?
I'd love to give her credit for pushing me, but it wasn't her pushing me. What it was she met my stepdad when I was like 8 years old, and we moved into a brand new middle-class suburb outside of Portland, Oregon. And the key to that was over the next, several years in middle school and then into high school, all of the kids that I was friends with were all expected to do well and to go to college. And nobody in my family had gone to college, neither on my mother's side or on my biological father's side. And so it was actually being surrounded by kids that like, yeah, we're going to college. We're all going to go to college. Of course, Jason, you're going to go to college, right? And I think that really was it was who I was surrounded by that really helped.
Do you think a lot of founders that are most successful have some level of that? There's something in their early childhood or something that sort of is pushing them to make them who they are. Obviously, sort of Steve Jobs sort of had a situation. Bill Gates didn't, right? Bill Gates came from a upper middle class, right? Like totally good sort of standard quote unquote family, those sorts of things. But something really pushed him. There was some level of like anger almost that Bill Gates supposedly had. Do you think there's something there, or some people are just they just have ideas they want to go build?
I think the best entrepreneurs are those who have some kind of a chip, right? They have some kind of something they're carrying. And this kind of takes me to something I also often recommend to people that are considering, starting a company. And my rule with all of my companies has been never start a company unless you are literally laying in bed in the middle of the night, like at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. You're laying in bed, you're wide awake thinking about it. Like if you don't have that level of excitement and energy towards it, where you literally have to get out of bed because you've been laying there for an hour and you're like, I just have to get out of bed and start working on this. If you don't have that level of excitement and energy for starting a company, it probably isn't for you. Yeah. Because it is so hard to start a company. It is so much work that you need a tremendous amount of energy and excitement going into it in order to make it across the finish line.
Yeah, that's great advice. Is it coming from your childhood, or what has kept you going all these years that you've been doing it? I mean, you're on your fourth company, you're still doing it. You have friends who've been very successful investors, which no offense to investors, I'm one myself, but like it's a little bit of an easier path in some cases, maybe being an investor. What keeps you going with all this?
Well, one is I know I'm not an investor. I don't like investing. I don't like being pitched. I really don't. In fact, I don't do any seed investing. I'm in like six different funds, and I just when I meet somebody, I'm like, hey, let me introduce you to this fund who I think maybe might be in your thesis. I mean, the reason why I keep doing it is because I genuinely enjoy building. I mean, and I enjoy the hard stuff. Like I this may sound sick, but I really do enjoy pitching investors. I really enjoy it. Right. Even if I get my ass kicked, and I will, I guarantee you, I'll pitch this company to some people in the months ahead, and they'll be like, yeah, we don't get it. That's a bad idea. And they'll look me right in the eye. Right. Or who knows? Maybe they'll say like, you know what? You're too old. We like founders that are under the age of 30. Right. And you're old. We're not, I might hear things that I might take very personal like that. And I just don't care, right? I love it. I love it so much that I'm willing to take those punches. It's all part of the
part of the game, right?
It is. It wouldn't be like entering the arena like if got to pull your sword out and the lion just rolls over and exposes its belly and you just kill it. That's not fun. That's not interesting.
Yeah, you want the game, you want the battle and the fight there, and just keep that going. Why do you think? Is it just for you? Like, one thing, do you think a lot of people just lose that as they get older? Do you? Or and not even older necessarily. But once again, like there's so many people you and I both know who came here, started one company, failed. I don't know. Now they're off, like living probably a great life, family, all that other stuff, but they're just not still trying to make this happen.
It is always sad to me when I see somebody who's taken some blows and then they've kind of gone out of the game. It makes me sad because especially if it's somebody I think well of, I'm like, dang it, if that person only knew how great they were, and if they only knew, like if they just took another swing at it, they really could. But yeah, they take these blows, and by the way, the blows can come in different ways. It's always really unfortunate when an entrepreneur is taking a blow with their business, and then their personal life also they take some hits at the same time, right? Something with family or health issues or something. Like I always feel really bad for those people because wow, they did have it double hard. And so yeah, I think there's a variety of reasons why people get out of the game. And by the way, I don't want to discount the other idea is it's also perfectly okay to realize, hey, this isn't for me. Like I enjoyed having my job over here, and I was really good at doing that particular job. Being a CEO is a lot of work. Like it's a lot more work, a lot more hours, and also forces you to get involved and do things you may not enjoy. You really don't want to do. When I do hear people that go back to working, and by the way, I did that. That's something that your audience should know. Biggest company I built. The biggest one yet was this big broadband ISP, nationwide broadband ISP that was part of the big crash in 2000. It was actually going to be the biggest IPO of 2000. It was named Darwin as we went out with the S1. So we filed the S1. We had Frank Quattrone, Credit Suisse, Lehman Brothers as our underwriters. We were going to be one of the biggest IPOs of 2000. Instead, we became one of the biggest craters in the earth in 2000. And I was 29. I was young enough that one of my mentors said to me, he said, "Hey, look, I know this is really hard on your ego. You must really feel like this is such a big bummer." He said, "I think you should go back to go get a job. Like go get a job at a company, maybe a bigger company where you can kind of retool, you can regain your confidence, you can learn on their dime." And I did that. I went to Dolby Labs and I had an amazing experience at Dolby. I mean, in hindsight, the job itself, I'm like, I'm not sure I enjoyed the job that much. It was a lot of heavy international travel. I had to wear a suit and tie.
It's a different time. A lot of people still wore suit and ties even then, but yeah, a crazy idea.
But it was great to retool. It was great to retool, and they sent me to programs at Harvard and Stanford and got me executive coach and all that kind of stuff. And that advice was really good. And so I spent 6 years, I think, at Dolby retooling before taking another swing at it.
And talk about Dolby really briefly, right? You were, I think what I dug up, right? You were on the CEO track, all this other stuff, potential CEO. And is this true that you walk out of his office after he told you, just go back and read the Wall Street Journal, relax and chill out a little bit? And you're like, wait a second, this is not a place for me. I can't stay here. And you're out.
Yeah, it's one of those wacky stories. Whenever I say it, it sounds like real fiction, but it's true. I was executive there, and I was trying to do some M&A deals, and I remember pitching something to my boss, and he's like, you're just trying too hard. You're just working too hard, trying to get these deals done, trying to make things happen. And Dolby, is just a highly profitable company, crazy high margins, just prints money. We just gone public. All of us executives are getting paid really, really well. Beautiful office with the couch and the table chairs, like super nice. He's like, go back to your office, just read the papers, relax. And it's a very funny moment where I told my wife that night about that conversation, and she's like, it might be time for you to go. It might not be for you.
I mean, it's funny. I think I was not an executive, but it was my first company that I worked at, and I was getting all these awards, all that other stuff. And I sat down with one of the senior HR people. Was like, hey, what's the path for me to become like the same level as my boss? And he was like an SVP or something. And she literally told me, she said, it's going to be 20 years to get there. It's like, and then I actually even asked her, I was like, but if I leave and get a new higher title and then come back, I can skip that way faster. And she's like, yeah, like literally you have to leave and then you get a new title somewhere else. I'm gonna give you a new title on top of that. I was like, oh, it's like, clearly I can't stay. And it's just crazy to me that they thought that way and didn't imagine that like you want to keep those high performers around. Okay, so you retooled, you're at Dolby, retool, and then what, you start Founders Den, and then August is basically what happened?
Yeah. Well, in the book, the ebook software company was in between there briefly. But the funny backstory on Founders Den I should have mentioned was, so when I left Dolby, it's classic. I left with my box of my stuff, and I went to my house in San Francisco. And on the first day I'm there by myself, I'm like, this is great. I can make myself lunch. I can take a nap after lunch. Yeah, I have nothing to do. I have no responsibility. And then it was like, day 2, I'm like, where is everybody? Like, this is really quiet, really lonely. I want to be around people. And so over the subsequent weeks, not even months, but like within weeks, I was talking with the guys about creating Founders Den, and it was just going to be an office for the 4 of us together. But I think I had coffee or a drink with Tim Chang, and he was a VC at Norwest Ventures at the time. And I mentioned it to him, and he's like, wait a minute, you're the 4 of you are going to get an office, you're going to share together and work on your separate companies, startups. And I said, yeah, that's the idea. And Tim said, well, what if I gave you some money and you got a much bigger space, and you could have not just the 4 of you, but maybe, 40 people like you. They're all, pedigreed people building things. And it wasn't a big check, but it was a big enough of a check for us to look at, getting a bigger space. And so that's how Founders Den was born.
That's crazy. And obviously like some iconic people that you worked with at Founders Den and went through it as well. Okay, so you go to Founders Den and then you start building on August. Like, why going from Dolby? I mean, I guess maybe it can squint and see like Dolby to August and smart locks, but like, why was that a path that made sense? Why was that something you woke up at 3 a.m. and couldn't stop thinking about?
Yeah. So the path there is so Dolby is a licensing company. That's what they ultimately are. They
license their core technology. I assume they're innovating on it somewhere to make it slowly better, keep their license viable.
Yeah, exactly. So Dolby's technology is in just about every consumer electronic device. Like, it's hard to find one that doesn't have one. And it's not just it's audio, video, it's a whole bunch of other stuff. And because they're so big and good at licensing technology, they have a whole third party licensing business, and in that business, which I was responsible for, we were licensing a new technology called NFC, near field communications. So I created an NFC licensing consortium.
NFC was a Dolby product, or
no, actually, it had nothing to do with Dolby,
okay.
but the same companies Dolby was working with on licensing other technologies were the core behind NFC. It was Sony, Nokia, France Telecom, and Philips Semiconductor before it became called NXP. So those four companies, basically, I was working with them to do the licensing of NFC to handsets. And we knew NFC was going to be really big for payments. Obviously, it is now with Apple Pay, and then for access control. And so I'd worked on that technology and worked on that licensing. And so I'd been thinking about NFC and is making its way into phones in the years ahead. And that's really how I came up with August. Is I wanted to make. Well, at first I wanted August to be purely software. I wanted it to be just an app you put on the iPhone 1 or 2, whatever it was that it was. iPhone just came out, and it would be an app that you just use as your credential to get into your office, right? To replace your HID card. Well, until I found out that HID had a monopoly on that, and you can't license it. There's no way to make your phone your key for your office or your hotel. So basically, I had to make my own lock, right? And I was going to use NFC as the technology for the lock for the home. Turns out Bluetooth was better, and this new Bluetooth thing that came out same time frame. So I ended up using Bluetooth instead of NFC, but that was the genesis. I basically made a piece of hardware because I had to in order to enable my technology. It's kind of like I met the founder of Peloton years ago, and John told me he only made treadmills and bicycles because he needed a place to put his content. He didn't want to be in hardware, but that's how he had delivered his technology, and that's kind of what August was for me.
Interesting. So then you get into this. Now, a lot of people say hardware's, I say this, hardware is hard. Like I don't like investing in hardware startups because hardware is really hard. It's so easy to mess up. Have you found that to be semi-true of like hardware? Or, I mean, clearly you're still doing it again with DOMA, but like.
Yeah. Well, very, very different formula this time. So yeah, when it comes to like smart home, it's Ring, August, Nest. I mean, there's only a handful that actually became successful and became, I think those all became profitable businesses. It's high risk to make your own branded consumer electronics and put it into retail stores. So, and certainly August, I had to raise a lot of money because we were in all the Apple stores and Best Buy and Home Depots, even Walmart stores. It was very expensive to manage all that brand and physical presence and inventory. So with DOMA, I'm doing things a bit differently. So instead of being our own branded products that are out there, we now are partnering with a dozen different brands, existing manufacturers making products, and we're more of like an Intel Inside kind of a model. So it's their channels that are already established. It's their customer acquisition cost, and we're the technology behind it.
What are key things that you found with building businesses in general that have led you to success, right? So how big did August end up getting? How big did InterQuest, once again, in the early 2000s, it probably had a very different trajectory in its own ways. But like, what are key things you look for beyond building a team? Like, how big does it get? How many people should you have? How do you decide when to grow? What cultural values do you try to put in place and establish for the team to lead to hopefully a higher chance of great outcomes?
I've always been a very strong believer in keeping the team as small as possible for as long as possible. Yeah. And my number I always quote is 26 employees. I think 26 is like the perfect number because
not 25, not 20, 27.
So it's 26. It's 26. You can really know everybody. You can have a relationship with everybody, and they all can know each other as well. And they can really work together and gel together to build something. Beyond that, it gets more difficult. It's not impossible. August grew to about 100 employees, which is fine. And I felt like I knew most people, but unfortunately not everybody, not as well as I would like. And yeah, August got 100 people, about 25 million in sales, which, for smart locks, that's a lot of smart locks. Yeah. I think, keeping the team small and communicating very well with everybody, I think is critical, and make sure everybody's on the same page. And there's tools now that help us do that. Slack and other things help us all stay coordinated.
And are there, when you try to keep it to 26 employees, are there people that you try to keep it to? Like, do you say like, hey, we don't want to hire, you and I have talked a little bit about sort of outsourcing like back office work, right? Say, hey, we don't want to hire back office people. That's not your core. Are there certain people you say, these are our core competency areas we absolutely need to have internally, and then others we just don't have to? And has it changed over time as well? Like building DOMA, is the type of people you hire different than who you would have hired at August?
Yeah. So I'm so glad you mentioned back office, because I so strongly believe that Just like you're not hosting your own servers, right? Nobody does that anymore. By the way, my first company we did.
So it was AWS didn't exist then, right?
That's right. That's right. That's right. So yeah, because there wasn't AWS, you had to host your own servers. But like back office now, there's no reason to have all those people. Chore is a great service. It's a great.
Thank you. That is. But that's exactly it, right? Like this is the thesis that I have certainly for not just back office work, but all businesses today. Is it's like, why would you build your own services, like servers? I mean, you wouldn't, because AWS exists, and you get to a point maybe where it becomes you might want to build them because you have so much work you're doing on servers. Maybe it's economical, but generally speaking, why would you do that? Why would you try to build and recreate the wheel with your back office services to understand how HR, compliance, all these pieces work? So what else? Like where do you decide as CEO? What is the line of like, we need this in-house and not? And then also explain the founder mentality of how to think through that. Because I think a lot of founders I speak to believe they need to do these things themselves. There's sort of this weird mentality where it's like, well, I need to understand how my operations work to be a good CEO. And I'm like, no, actually it's the opposite. But people want to hear it from me. Maybe they'll hear it from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because it's like a bell curve, right? There's in some ways you can see where you want to outsource as much as possible from the beginning that you don't need to do, and then maybe at some point in time you come to a conclusion that you need to have more control over some of those elements. You bring it in house, but then you also hear the stories of, this is to the bell curve. You hear about even some big companies that had stuff in house are moving away from those things. I think Amazon and announcing this giant white collar jobs layoff is a great example of that, where they've looked at a whole bunch of areas where they're like, you know what, we just don't need to have this in house anymore. We don't need to have all these people. So it's I mean, you have to look at it through the life cycle of the company, what the needs are. But I'm such a huge fan of outsourcing wherever you can, because what you get to do then is you get to have people that are experts. Having chore, pick something, pick like HR. Yeah, exactly. HR. Like you get to have the benefit of chore doing HR, not just for say DOMA, but for all these other companies. So I get to benefit. Like, so I'm hiring some employees in some state like Colorado. Well, chore has already dealt with Colorado employment law issues, right? And I get to benefit from that expertise. Whereas if I had somebody in house that was doing that, he or she may not have have any experience working with Colorado employment law.
Correct. And you also get the other benefit to outsourcing is you don't have to, I mean, this pain well, and I think a lot of early founders don't, you don't have to recruit, hire, train, or manage chore either, or your outsourcing partner, right? You don't, the cost of doing those pieces of recruiting, hiring, training someone, and then managing them weekly, doing a one-on-one weekly with someone in an area you don't care about, like, you don't care, I'm putting words in your mouth, but like, you probably don't care about how HR is working. You care about your culture as your company, but you don't care about the HR. So you're going to have a one-on-one with your head of HR of like, oh, our payroll system broke. You're like, why am I wasting? I would imagine you'd say like, why am I wasting time on this? Like, I don't care. Just go fix it. Like, I don't need to have a one-on-one with you about this weekly.
CEOs need to be ferociously protective of their time, like ferociously, and try to find every way possible to not have things, drawing on your time, right? And having 12 direct reports. That's the death of a CEO, right? You don't want to do all those one-on-ones. You don't want to have all that.
So how still do you decide, right? So I come across a lot of founders who I think are penny wise and pound foolish, where they're like, well, like I can do this back office work myself, and I'm using us as an example, but you can plug in almost anything. I can do this work myself pretty quickly, and it saves us some money. And I'm like, what I would say to them is like, yeah, but your time is so important. Like no VC gave you money. And it's like, congratulations, you saved a few extra $1,000 this month, but you wasted 20 hours of your time, and now you're 20 hours behind your competition.
That's right. You have to measure your time carefully. You have to really. I just got this little gadget. I don't have it with me, but I'll just use my AirPods case as I bought this little gadget that it has times on it, like 5 minutes, 20 minutes, like
a Pomodoro timer sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know what that is. Again, so yeah, you just flip it. Oh, it's digital. You just flip it over on the side that you want, and then it counts down from that time. And I just started using it whenever I'm starting to do something where I realize, I could get rat holed into this, and I could lose a lot of time if I'm not careful. And I just used it. I just used it fixing my dishwasher. So the latch of my dishwasher broke, and I ordered the part on Amazon. It took me 5 minutes to order this $30 part. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna if I can do this like in 15 minutes, great. But it's beyond 15 minutes, and I think it's gonna be like 15 more, that's it. Call it. It's just like, my time's too valuable. Like, let the expert come in and do it. Like, don't get sucked into this rat hole. Manage your time carefully.
So, I mean, preach in every single way. This is exactly the right mindset that every founder needs to have. And by the way, I think that's actually a large way how many fail is they don't measure their time properly and they get sucked in. I mean, I've told the story a bunch. Like there was a founder I met who had told me that he super smart, worked at like Bain or one of the top consulting firms, had all the things, right? McKinsey even, right? And he's like, yeah, but I'm doing my own bookkeeping. Why? He's like, well, I know how to do it. Doesn't take that long. And I'm like, yeah, but that's why you're 6 years into your company and you still failed to raise a Series A. Right. It's because you're wasting time doing your own bookkeeping. Because in what you saved $150, $200 a month on that? Really? Anyways, so how does the founder decide when something is worth outsourcing and when it should be in-house, right? Because there's always a fine line. And I don't know if I have a good answer of like when it's clear what should be brought in-house or what not.
I largely leverage like my experts in those matters. So HR is a good example. So I'm lucky that one of my friends, he was the EVP of HR for EA for years. In fact, Steve Jobs personally called him and tried to get him to come run HR for Apple.
Which would have been probably better for a stock portfolio, but
I think he told me that the package Steve offered him would have netted him $1 billion.
EA is a good company, but not like Apple when Steve Jobs was there for the next.
Yours on his car, go like this, not like this. That's it. So yeah, I call someone like Rusty. His name's Rusty Roof. Is a great guy, and I'm like, yeah, is it time to pull these HR functions into my company or keep outsourcing or vice versa, right? You have people that are experts that have done this many times, seen it. He advises many companies. So it's having people that can, that can give you an objective, independent opinion.
Do you think the world's changing in that way? And so what I mean is it might have been harder to outsource things. Like you couldn't have used outsourced server stuff to AWS because AWS didn't exist. Is the world becoming more and more a world where you can get great external talent fractionally? So another example. So we've used, and I actually met somebody last night who does this for a lot of companies, fractional product people, fractional PMs come build this specific product and do this thing. And then you're out and then you're done. And then obviously if it goes great, maybe you start maybe at some point you realize, oh, I have so much work. I want to bring them in-house, but I'm outsourcing fractional to product people. There's of course fractional engineering teams. How do you decide, do we get to this point where people certainly talk about like a company of one where the entire company is a CEO and a ton of fractional people?
I love it. I absolutely, like, why not? I love it. And if somebody has an example of a successful company that's profitable that as a one employee, I'd love to hear about it.
I'll give you one. So I don't know if this is actually one employee, but it's pretty close. In some of the space you and I both know a little bit well because of my brother and our shared friendship there. But I think some of the Kardashian companies are basically like, I don't know, there's one there's Skims, but there's the makeup company, all these ones. Guess what those companies are? They're essentially a Kardashian with great distribution. Everything, maybe they have 10 people on the team, but I think the team's like that small and they outsource, it's outsourced manufacturing, it's outsourced design, it's outsourced everything. And then just when a Kardashian is doing like Instagram reels all day long.
Wow. I love that. I think that's great.
And they're $1 billion plus companies.
Yeah. How cool is that? That's the future. I think smaller teams is the future.
I think so too. They move faster. You have less overhead, and you can stay in your zone of genius as a founder as long as possible. Because this, and maybe explain this a bit more. When you got to 100 people at August, you're probably stretched a million different ways. And like, actually, on the note, how did you stay focused as the company grew? How do you stay focused on like where should you really spend your time? And like, is there a heuristic that you use to decide where to focus and spend your time?
Yeah. Well, at that stage with August, I like I said, I had like 7 vice presidents reporting to me, and all of them were the best of the best at what they did. And I gave all of them all responsibilities for the company. Like the only responsibility I had was to interface with our investors, to interface with press, with journalists, because journalists still like to talk to the CEO, and give motivational talks, once a week to the company, to the team. And to be honest with you, I didn't have much more responsibility than that. That was really, that's the only thing I was actually, I would contribute in areas like I'd sit in on product session and things like that, or marketing meetings. But I didn't have the responsibility. Contribute, but I didn't have the responsibility. It was completely distributed. And I think to scale a company, and for August to go to the next level, which it did, by the way, after it got purchased, it did scale to be a much bigger company, independent, by the way. It's kept separate. You have to structure it that way.
How did you decide where, though, even when you're going to these meetings, how do you make sure you weren't getting in the way of the team? So I think what I find sometimes, if a founder or CEO inserts themselves and say, I just want to be part of the conversation, next thing you know, they're actually kind of guiding it because the CEO says, this is my opinion. It suddenly becomes the law of the land.
Yeah. Also, that's true. I also say that your presence can also just change the dynamic, right? People might be less likely to speak up when they have a good idea, right? But they're less comfortable speaking about it with the CEO in the room. Yeah. And so, you have to think about these unintended consequences of showing up. I certainly always ask. And as I mentioned, I hired my VPs have very strong personalities. They're very comfortable telling me, no, I don't want you in my meeting.
Great. This is what you want to have people like that. How do you, I want to be kind of some time too, but are there key things, speaking of hiring, since you said your team is so important, are there rules that you use or heuristics you use to hire great people? Like obviously it's a sales process, but how do you identify them? How do you convince them to come join you with this vision? How do you know that they're really as good as they seem to be? And then how often do you hire for skills and sort of experience versus tenacity? And how do you define the two and the differences? Because sometimes too much skill can also be a problem and get in the way.
Yeah. So I'm very big on skill. I'm very big on, especially when you're trying to limit your team to be as small as possible. That means you're going to have people that have the skills that you need, and you can't compromise on that, right? You need to make sure that people have the skills that you need.
But that also means they have to be able to get like their hands dirty, right? Like if you want to hire the best, but you hire a head of HR, let's say, most heads of HR will never touch running the actual payroll system. So like, right, if you're a small company, you need a head of HR who's cool with getting their hands dirty.
Yeah. So the skills, and then number two, I really try to only hire people that I believe are intrinsically motivated, right? Meaning that they are someone who genuinely enjoys what they do. They really enjoy working. They're the kind of people that they're working early until late, not because they want people to see them sending the emails. They care less about that. No, they're sending that email at 7 a.m. because they just can't wait to get going. They really genuinely enjoy, whatever problems they're solving. It's just in their DNA. And the way that I screen for that when I interview people is I like to ask them, like, what are your hobbies? Like, what are you interested in? What gets you excited? In my opinion, understanding what they do with their free time, it can be an indicator of who they are and what drives them.
What would be a good answer and a bad answer to that question for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, a good answer is somebody who really enjoys adventure. They enjoy mountain biking and travel, and or even they like to cook. They really enjoy the process of shopping at the farmer's market and assembling ingredients and then serving something they can be proud of and feel good about. What I'm looking for there is for somebody who they really just enjoy life. They really enjoy life and they enjoy being alive. You can have your days off. Don't get me wrong, people, we all need to chill. We all need downtime, relax and read a book. You can tell when you ask people enough questions, are they someone who's just driven? They just really enjoy, drinking life, and they want to drink as much out of life while they're here. And those are the people I like to surround myself with, both professionally and personally as well.
Dude, that's awesome. I love that. So the last kind of key question on this sort of topic, maybe a little bit, is, are there certain culture, like what sort of culture do you try to establish? Is it a culture around what it means to be be a curious person or enjoy life in every way? Like, what is the kind of company culture you create? And then how does that contrast? Right? We talked about, Elon Musk earlier, right? Like, he probably creates a very different kind of culture, or maybe not. Like, what is the culture that you want to inculcate in your companies?
I could give a lot of generic answers to this, and there's lots of great answers, and I support those answers. I support about creating a collaboration and mutual support and all those wonderful things. And I don't want to take away from those, but I will say there's one thing that I think I'm a little unique on, and you got to be careful with this. But I enjoy giving people radical responsibility, and letting them own something. And also letting them sort of feel the pain when they blow it, right? Like, we have the daily stand-up meeting, and I love it when somebody talks about something that they worked on and it just totally screwed up, and they're like, "Damn it, I blew it, and I have to start all over again." And I love how to explain it to everybody else, that they blew it, because nobody's judging them, nobody's judging. But at the same time, we're all listening, okay, it's good that you recognize where you failed on this and how you're going to course correct. And I really enjoy letting people have a crazy amount of independence and support them, and offer to help where you can, but letting them know that it is ultimately on them. Like they have to deliver that, or it's just not going to happen. And I love to hire people that enjoy that. They really enjoy having enough rope to hang themselves.
Yeah. How do you make sure you hold them accountable to those things? And like, no, I mean, so how do you hold them accountable to whatever that target is? Even if like, let's say they messed up. You're like, cool, it's okay you messed up. I want to hear your explanation. How do you still hold them accountable to the end goals? And then when you decide like they just maybe they are hanging themselves essentially.
Yeah. So definitely making goals public, right? Making sure everybody knows what everybody's goals are, right? You can use OKRs or whatever tool you want to use. There's a lot of great tools out there, but I think having as much transparency around what everybody's responsibilities are and what they're expected to deliver and that they've agreed to that, right? That they've agreed that this is mine and I'm responsible for this. And then and as I mentioned, and then publicly talking about, about the successes and the failures, right? And not hiding it, but it's like, okay, let's learn from this and figure out how not only can you do better next time, but all of us can learn from your mistake, so that we can all try to do better.
How quickly will you let someone go if they're not hitting their targets?
Yeah, so I'm a pretty big believer in ripping that Band-Aid off sooner. I've had this conversation 100 times with founders. Everyone always agrees that whenever they let somebody go, they almost never regret it. And they almost always say, "I wish I would have done it months earlier." Almost universally, everyone says, "I wish I would have done it months earlier."
It's almost the moment you start thinking you should let someone go, that's the time you should do it. Don't wait. Don't rethink it. If you have that gut feeling, it's the right feeling, and just go with it.
That's right. I let this is an executive level person, right? They were there in August for I want to say a week. It was 1 weekend, and I just knew this wasn't going to work. This wasn't going to work, and it was brutal. This person took it very hard too. They just couldn't believe it. Just couldn't believe it so quickly I'd make such a decision. But it was, and I verified with other people. I didn't make a decision in silo, but it was absolutely the right thing to do. And as rough as it is, it was the right thing to do.
And in the end, I mean, this might be the wrong way of looking at it, but I think it's a good way. I think in the end, people, hopefully this person appreciated it in the end. Maybe they learned something from it. It's okay. Why wasn't I a fit there? What can I learn from this? And it wouldn't have been a win for that person for them to stick around for 6 months. That would have been worse, right? Then it's on their LinkedIn profile. Now, that person could have, hey, look, I just was unemployed for a little bit longer. No one needs to know they spent a week at August. They don't need to know any of that stuff. And they can maybe learn a little bit from it versus sticking around for another six months and then really being stressed all the time because oh my God, Jason's disliking me. I'm not performing. That sucks for that person.
Exactly. And I'm happy to say this particular person actually friended me on Facebook later, and we still stay in touch to this day. And it's great.
So see, it can be a win. So sort of a quick lightning round on a few things. What's the most underrated trait of a great founder? I mean, maybe we've talked about it. You could say it could be sales, but what's an underrated trait that really stands out and the best ones that you know?
Being able to operate with lack of sleep.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay, then I'm going to switch up actually one of my questions, make it earlier for this, because then the next question for you would be, how do you handle work-life unity, if at all? Does that exist in an entrepreneur's life?
I'm a huge believer in balance. I really do. I don't understand if you're not exercising and eating healthy. I just don't know how you can deal with the stress.
But also, how can you sleep if you're not? You said an underrated trait is also not being able to be able to work on a lack of sleep. So,
and then a social life, family life, I think is critical. Right? You need people to help you recharge, process things, and you need that time. You have to bake in social time. I bake it into my life, my friendships. I make it happen.
So how do you do it? How do you do it with also not being able to sleep all the time, or being so stressed, or waking up in the night because you're so excited about what you're building?
Yeah, I mean, sleep is you have to find a way to sleep. Just a quick hack on that for me is airplanes. So if I'm not working on my laptop, I'm sleeping on the airplane. I'm not watching movies. Yeah. That's way too valuable time. And I happen to sleep really well on airplanes. Yeah, sleep whenever, wherever you can.
Yeah, just get sleep as whatever, you use that free time for something. What's your favorite productivity hack or daily ritual?
I'm a big believer in looking at your calendar at the start of the day and actually planning blocks of time for everything you're going to do. And so on my calendar, you'll see you'll see things that are just for me. It's just a block of time for me to do some task, right? That needs to get done, and it needs to be blocked and protected. And I think you have to do that every morning. You have to plan the day all the way through. If you just throw into the day and start answering emails and stuff, and you don't structure that, then the day can get away from you.
To do that daily, or why wouldn't you do something where you just set aside the whole week? Just say, hey, between 2 to 3 p.m. is my focus time on whatever. But you'd say you do it daily, and does it change then daily?
Certainly you should do it at the start of the week. You should plan the whole week. I do it somewhat, but I things for me change quite rapidly. So I'm often, tweaking, adjusting every individual day, which maybe isn't the most ideal approach, but it works for me.
That's great. No, I mean, look, I'm a big proponent of not letting your inbox becoming your sort of like calendar of what you're doing. But I also find it really hard sometimes. Like literally, I blocks for like, I'm going to focus on this project, but then first thing I'm going to go do is check to make sure there's no crazy burning things that come up. And next thing those burning things distract me. And we'll finish off. The last question I ask everybody is, if there's a single piece of advice that you could give to every entrepreneur to be excellent, like what is that advice that you would give those entrepreneurs listening to this or want to be entrepreneurs?
You have to radically believe in yourself. You have to know that inside of you, there is someone who will figure it out. It may not be this current company, may not be your next company, might be the one after that. You have a desire that is unique and special. And you also have a certain amount of hubris, right? Which is special. Like you have to recognize that's also a gift, right? To think you actually, deserve the right to do this, to build something. You need to own that, right? And recognize that it's there. And it's for you to figure out. It may take a while. You've heard about my failures. I've had plenty of them. Hack at it long enough, work at it long enough. You'll find what works and how you succeed.
Yeah, no, very well said. Jason, if people want to learn more about you, about DOMA, about your thinking, you name it, how can people get in touch?
Yeah, probably best way is Instagram. My Instagram handle is Napa Jason J.
Yes, and go drink wine with Jason in Napa. You'll be a lucky person. Jason, thank you so much. You said time is one of the most precious resources we all have. So the fact you're spending some of it with me and my audience is super appreciated. Thank you. Have a great meeting with your CEO colleagues. I hope you have nothing major to bring up to them, but have a great time with them. I sincerely appreciate you. Thank you for being on.
Thank you, Adam. This was great.